that fear of sitting in traffic and going under the aquarium lights like a lizard for 9 hours a day for a boss that hates me was completely absolved the moment I realized that I could work from a laptop and go anywhere in the world.
Welcome to another episode of Fail with Fire. I am your podcast host, Phoenix Ha, and the CEO of AdBeacon. We are so excited to bring on another season. This is our season opener and is a really good friend of mine. I've grown to become very good friends with both him and his wife, Jordan Menard. Welcome to the pod.
What's up, Phoenix? Good to be here.
Good to be here. This is also going to be a really fun podcast. I'm not sure if Jordan will go into attribution with me. We still want to stay friends at the end of the conversation, so we might not. But yeah, this pod is powered by my favorite first-party data attribution platform, which is AdBeacon. Big surprise to everybody. But let me give everybody a Jordan Menard intro in the Phoenix way. I'll do the official way, and then we'll do our playful barbecue way. So my relationship with you, Jordan, actually started on, I don't know if you remember, a Zoom call. And yeah, it was a Zoom call, I think, with Shaq, for founder. I just you through the screen and I went to my fiance and was like, so I'm going to do business with this guy named Jordan now.
Yeah, it was immediate. And then our first IRL interaction was on the plane to AdWorld Dubai. When it was, we both saw each other in the plane cabin, and then we drank a bunch of espresso martinis and talked about Facebook ads.
Yeah, and God. What's also really funny that nobody knows is the whole me calling myself daddy and father actually sprouted from a text thread between you, me, and Shaq. And I think I said something along the lines of, I identify as daddy and or father. And then I think you sent me, or either Shaq sent the message saying, do we do socks or do we not do socks on a plane in a public area?
Shoes.
No, I think it was socks.
I think it was shoes. It was like, do you wear your shoes on the plane? Because obviously you wear them on the plane, but when you get on, do you leave them on or do you take them off? I know because I tweeted about it and some of the people that responded were completely irate. They could not believe that people were taking their shoes off on the plane. And me, like the moment I sit down and the seatbelt's on, shoes off instantly.
Same. And you were like 3 seats behind with both you and your wife, Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that's like the fun little intro. But actually, Jordan, you're a fantastic public speaker. You have earned your stripes time and time again in the media buying space. One of the most intelligent people I know that has efficacy behind what they do. I can speak volumes about who you are on a personal level, but also on a professional level, just watching you and the results that you deliver. And I loved, we had a private conversation where you're saying basically, I want to be a winner quietly. And I love that, right? You don't have to be the loudest person in the room to be the most powerful, whatever power it is. But that's my intro to you. Let's do the official. So you are the founder. Are you also the CEO of Motif Digital?
Yeah.
Yes. Founder and CEO of Motif Digital, boutique omni-channel growth and retention agency out of SD, San Diego. You have worked with Everyday Dose, Glade Optics, Physician's Choice, Diff Eyewear, and so many more, and definitely growing brands to 9 figures and above. Those are some big numbers. So really honored to have you on the podcast, not only from a personal side, but again, a business side. Welcome.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here. I've watched a few of the episodes and the content's awesome. I love what you're doing. And yeah, it's really an honor to be here. I'm excited.
I'm honored to hear that. We've been getting really good feedback. But again, we love constructive feedback. For those of you who are listening, that like, I wish I could hear more of Jordan, less of you, Phoenix. Done. Say less. We'll make it happen. But Jordan, take us back to a human level, because most people have seen you on a stage or heard your name and go, who's Jordan Menard? And they're like, oh shit, I need to work with him. Even when we were in Dubai, someone pulled you aside and wanted to work with you immediately. And I'm like, yeah, boss, that's awesome. Now, if we were at a barbecue and let's just say your grandmother or somebody who is 10 degrees separated from what we do for work, how would they introduce you? They pull you, Jordan. They're like, Phoenix, I want you to meet Jordan. What would they say?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think if it was my mom, I think she's still not 100% certain what I do for a living. She knows it's online marketing, but I think she would probably describe me in that context as someone who is really passionate very driven, who really like takes pride in their work, and someone who's always questioned the status quo. Growing up, I was always getting in trouble. I was always getting kicked out of class, sometimes for actually doing things that are worthy of kicking someone out of class. But a lot of times I would be reading a book during a subject I found boring, right? And I would get in trouble for reading. Shout out to Miss Light, fifth grade, for kicking me out of the class. So I always just did my own thing and did what I wanted to do, even if that meant like reading books during a boring class. And I think that's really how I found where I am today. I remember when I discovered online marketing and the epiphany that I had, and it was like as soon as I understood what I was looking at, it was like push all the chips, go all in. And now I've been doing it for 8 years.
Yeah, your genesis, like the story behind how you came into digital marketing was really interesting. So you were supposed to be a lawyer.
Yeah. So I was supposed to be a lawyer. When I graduated high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. The thought of sitting in traffic, going to an office, sitting under aquarium lights and working in a cubicle all day, and then going home in traffic just so I could pay bills seemed like a death sentence, literally. And so when I graduated high school, I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I moved all over the US doing odd jobs. The first company I ever started was painting houses. So I would get the deal and I would actually do all of the painting, everything. And that sucked. And then I realized I wanted to get rich. So I decided to go to college. And everyone had always told me, because I was good at arguing, that I should go be a lawyer. So I went into speech and debate at Palomar College, and I decided to just set out my career and go be a lawyer without really critically thinking about what I was doing, right? I knew I was good at talking. I knew lawyers made a lot of money. Speech and debate seemed like a way I could get a scholarship. So let's go for it. And that's what ended up happening, right? I won the California State Debate title my first year for junior college. And then the next year I won state again. I won nationals, and I became the #1 ranked junior college debater in the country. I got a full ride scholarship to Southern Illinois, and it was pretty much paved from there on out of how I would go to Southern Illinois directly into law school. And that summer, I got a job doing over the phone sales for this company that made website widgets for real estate agents. Like, it was like a little flash based home search that went directly on your site that connected directly to the MLS. And so I was just like cold calling people, real estate agents that I found on Google, and just pitching them and trying to sell them either that home search or ideally like a full WordPress website. And I had also at that time done like a short internship with a family friend who was a lawyer. And once I was like really like watching what lawyers did all day, I realized like I would hate this. Right. And so I felt stuck because I was like, I had this full ride scholarship, and then I saw the work and I was like, oh my gosh, like this sucks. I don't want to do this at all. And so one day it was late and I was looking for clients, and I was like on like page 4 or 5 of Google. And I saw this ad on the top of the page, and I had this light bulb went off. It was like, I don't click those because it's an ad, but the reason I'm seeing it is because people do. And I clicked it, and it took me to a landing page that was doing exactly what I was doing. And then I just had this moment of, oh my gosh, this guy is just putting his stuff where everyone can see it, having people come to him. Meanwhile, I'm like a schmuck going through page after page, cold calling. And it was like, at that moment, I was like, okay, whatever this is it. This is my thing. This is what I want to do. I don't want to do anything else but this. And I printed out a bunch of stuff about Google AdWords, went home, and because I didn't even have my own computer at the time, went home and just started devouring that content.
That's awesome.
And then I went into affiliate marketing, and that's ultimately how I got here. And I'm still an affiliate to this day. And so, yeah, it was that moment that everything clicked. I dropped out of school. This will tie back in when we talk about my failure. And yeah, and here we are today.
There are so many really good nuggets of what you just said. And if you're blessed to be able to have a one-on-one conversation with Jordan, you'll understand there's depth there. There's so much depth, and there's a lot of interesting critical thinking, which is why I found it so funny that you said that there was no critical thinking when you were going into college. Then again, you were in your adolescence and trying to figure it out and claw. As somebody who does teach, I hear often, actually just had this conversation with the kid recently where he was like, I was like, where are you going to go to college? Are you excited? He's a sophomore, junior. He's, I want to go to USC. Okay. USC is not an easy school to get into.
Sure.
And I said, okay, why do you want to go to USC? I want to make a lot of money. Okay. How do you want to make a lot of money? I don't know. Okay. So why is USC going to get you there? I don't know. People who graduate from USC make a lot of money.
Yep.
It's a very dulled idea. Just to call everybody out, anybody who's listening, it's a very dull, simple idea.
I could not agree more with you. And you'll be amazed at how that leads you down the wrong road 9 out of 10 times. I decided I wanted to make a lot of money. And so I wanted to go be a lawyer because I was good at talking. Like I said, I didn't think critically about it. I just knew that if I did that, I would make a lot of money. How I got into online marketing is when I saw like what it was and instantly clicked in my brain. But more importantly, I realized that I could do that wherever, right? That fear of sitting in traffic and going under the aquarium lights like a lizard for 9 hours a day for a boss that hates me was completely absolved the moment I realized that I could work from a laptop and go anywhere in the world. And it was that lifestyle that I made me choose, right? I was like, that's the lifestyle I want. I'll figure out the money portion. Looking back, that is, if I could tell anything to my younger self, it would be that, right? Choose the lifestyle you want and let that lifestyle pick a career. Don't just choose the money and the lucrative side of it, because that's how you can find yourself in something that you absolutely hate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I firmly believe that common sense isn't common, but everybody has their own common sense. So for you, you went through the full funnel. You're understanding that you have multiple clicks that is just like wasting time and wasting money. You saw someone else doing it the way that you thought made sense. You start to dig, you get hungry, and you're like, it clicked. Maybe something that didn't click with law clicked with digital marketing. But that's my point, is common sense isn't common. When I got out of college, I was desperate for mentorship, desperate for somebody to teach me all the things that made them successful. And what we quickly realize is everyone's just trying to figure it out. Some people are really great mentors, don't get me wrong, but it's very hard to find a good mentor. And we quickly realized, or I did, common sense is so not common. To me, it doesn't make sense, so make it make sense. To that person, it makes sense, but to me, I go, the hell are you talking about? Or like very simplistic things of how to communicate via email, how to communicate with other people, EQ, like all of it. You find your lane, like you were saying, find a goal, a lifestyle that you want, and then find a lane that it is common sense to you that isn't for somebody else. And then you'll stand out. You'll be a shark in a very small pond, right? Versus a guppy in an ocean and a sea. Great. Love that. That was really nice as an intro.
Yeah. One thing I want to just tack on what you said, because I find it so interesting. A problem that we have with like how our society functions now is that we judge intelligence like purely off IQ. And that's just like such a like small window of what true intelligence is. I remember when my brother got a drum set for Christmas when he was a kid, and my parents, cause like when I was a kid, like I still am this way, but when I was a kid, like I had no filter. Like I would say like the meanest stuff. And so my parents were like prepping me. They're like, hey, look, we got your brother a drum set. He's going to suck. It's going to be really rough at first. You need to not be a dick to him. That was like the whole conversation. And Christmas is coming. I know my brother's getting this drum set. I'm like, don't ruin it for him. Don't ruin it for him. He gets the drum set. He's super stoked. Christmas morning, opens it, sets it up upstairs. And once it's set up, he's like looking at it. I sit down to try and play something. I can't do anything, right? He sits down. And all of a sudden, first try, a beat comes out. And I just instantly at that moment was like, whoa, not only were they preparing me for this to suck, but he sat down and instantly knew how to do it. I sat down, I couldn't do anything. And that was like the first time I saw like how I might have more IQ than my brother in this area, but his talent for music, the way his brain understands music, is infinitely smarter than me. And that was like the first time I really understood like the value of going for something that you're naturally good at, and you're naturally inclined to do, and not forcing it. And so I think to your point, find something that fits you, that you will love to do, and that you're naturally inclined to be good at. And that's going to give you just an unfair advantage in every area.
See, this is why I love these conversations, especially with you. And because we're friends, we could go deep, deep and so good because I love a lot of trauma took me to a place where I started to appreciate people. My saying used to be, I hate people. I still hate people, but not truly. I love people because people are so beautiful. Like you said, your brother is so musically talented. You are really gifted with numbers, really gifted with numbers. You're really gifted with communication. I know I'm gifted with communication. I also know that my mom is gifted with business and scaling. There's so many things, right? And nobody's perfect. And also, who are you to put someone else down? You have no idea what their common sense is because it probably will dominate something of yours. Really love that. Now, the point of the podcast, which is not going to be hard to hit with us, I feel like, especially with you, is to highlight failures in our lives because often we get over the failure, we don't reflect. Some people don't. And I think it's so important for us to go back to that place of failure and understand the fire that fueled us to move forward, what we learned from it, and how we came back from it. Jordan, if you can, just take me back to a time that you consider a failure and how you crawled and clawed your way back up.
Yeah, man, I have so many. It's hard to choose. Starting, I think my first failure was when I got expelled from high school. I played a prank on an ex-girlfriend who we had this bit.
You got expelled from high school?
I did.
Wait, not like a suspension. You got expelled from high school. Okay.
Full on expelled. I had to go appear before the board during the summer and ask them to let me back in so it would be removed from my record, which worked. But yeah, so what happened was I was in high school. I was a sophomore, junior, and I had this crazy high school relationship with this girl. And she had been a serious jerk to me, cheated on me all night. We had fallen out. We had not talked for all this time. And she one night called me and started to talk to me again, whatever, and then asked me if we could go out to dinner and squash everything. So it's after football practice one night and I'm in the locker room and my buddy's, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm going out to dinner with this girl. And collectively it was like, no, dude, not again. What are you doing? And I was like, look, man, like I already agreed. And then my buddy joking was like, what if we kidnapped you? Like, well, yeah, what if? And then that joke like slowly turned into a plan. And then before I knew it, we had this like full on backstory, plan to execute, location, everything set up, right? So we get a Panda Express. I meet up with that girl. And as I'm like walking up, I have a million doubts in my head. Should I do this? And then as I'm walking up, I see her walking and she brought a friend with her. And I'm like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this is the time we're supposed to sit down and hash this out. And you bring a friend. And at that moment, like whatever reservations I had out the window, I was like, all right, let's do this. So we get our food, we sit down. I tell this story about this like vendetta, about this guy against me, yada, yada, whole thing. And how he's like looking for me at all times. And her friend goes, so you're telling me that this could be your last meal, like joking? And I was like, oh, you have no idea what you just did. Not 5 minutes later, my friend's car screeches to a halt. We're sitting outside and they pop out of the car all with like beanies over their head. And I'm like, whoa, this is like convincing. They run up, they throw a bag over my head and knock me backwards. The girl flips the Chinese food everywhere, is hitting them. They like pick me up, pull me into the car, throw me in the trunk. We drive away. We go back to the school and we're like laughing. We think it's so funny. And we didn't realize how much time went by, but about 20, 30 minutes. And then we go back to school and I'll never forget like coming back to the restaurant and seeing all the cop cars and realizing what happened. Long story short, we caused an Amber Alert and they shut down the freeway because they thought I was like actually kidnapped. Yeah. Police were not happy and a bunch of other stuff happened. Anyway, that was like where I think I really failed as a human being for the first time and felt extremely guilty. And I think what I've really learned from that is one, the first thing of getting kicked out of school, it's like when you go to the other school and you've been expelled, what kind of people are drawn to you being expelled? And you realize, oh, I'm the loser. Like I'm like the people that want to hang out with me are like the ones that like want to ditch class to go smoke weed. Like I'm the loser. And I think from there, that was the first time where I realized that like this like problem I had with authority and this idea that I didn't really care what people thought could actually lead me to a really bad position. And so I think that was like the first time where I really dealt with a failure as a person. My parents were super disappointed. All my friends at school, it was just a really bad scene. So that would be like the first failure. And I think the fire behind that was just, again, I thought that whatever I was doing mattered more than what the whole world thought. And that was like a very like harsh wake up call to what the world was really like. And then I think my other big failure was when
Wait. We cannot just glaze over this failure.
I was hoping we would, but go ahead.
No, we're not doing this. My job is to press in. So I'm going to be real with you because I firmly believe that this podcast is like you and I sitting on a couch and just ripping shit, right? It's not like this glaze over. So first of all, I'm really, I sit back and I go, how fucked we would be if all of the people in the D2C space that we're friends with right now were teenagers together growing up.
Yeah.
Oh, how all of us would be in prison.
For sure.
Not jail, prison. The smartest prisoners, but we'd have our own gang. But my heart, it's so funny. It swells when you say these things because you're going like, that's a big failure. And for me, I'm just laughing because I'm like, dude, I've done stupid shit like that too. Who's to say, sorry, we're kids. We don't think about the consequences. We don't think about the heaviness like of an Amber Alert. We just go, oh, okay. You know, like I used to steal people's keys and do dumb shit. And anyway, there's a lot of stories we'll go into. But my point is that bless you for thinking that was a failure and a fire because that obviously imprinted on your heart and is a big part of who you are character-wise. Like, I'm not going to be this person. I will say one thing that kind of made me switch. So it doesn't always have to be like, I lost $50 million and I came back. It's just a very big character switch. For Ryan was in high school. Just a little background on my fiance, love him. He was with somebody for 10 years. He met her in high school. So he was with her for a very long time. He's only had a handful of girlfriends, which is why I snagged him. Ladies, snag a man who hasn't been with anybody.
Great catch. We love Ryan.
We love Ryan. Anyway, so when he was in high school, all the girls loved him. He was the minority. He was like the one white kid, which is funny because where I live, everyone's white. But for him, he was the one white kid and all these girls loved him. So he was like a player. He would text multiple women at the same time and like all this. And he quickly started feeling gross. I don't being this guy. I don't like being known as this guy.
Mm-hmm.
What he did is he ended up being with one girl for 10 years to prove to himself he's not that guy. That obviously there's love there, there's other things. But like I said, like those little minute changes, especially in men versus women, I found so interesting. Like for you didn't want to be that guy. You didn't want to be the guy that just said, screw authority. And maybe you were all throughout your life. I still am too. But it was a character actualization there with a failure and a fire.
But it took me, that was like the first time I realized it, but it didn't set in, right? Like it took me years after that of continual like beating my head against the wall. And then there's a lot of other failures that I have. The one that comes to mind from a financial perspective is I wanted to create this program that brought people from knowing nothing into our career. I was going to sell it for a lot of money, yada, yada. I looked at all like the course platforms and I was like, oh, this isn't what I need. I'm going to develop my own. So I spent a ton of money developing my own platform. I probably put about 80,000 into developing this platform. I built like this habit tracker. I built all this gamification, right? Where if you logged in 2 days, you would be heating up. 3 days in a row, you'd be on fire. Every day you kept logging in, you would extend your fire streak. I built all this stuff that I thought was super cool. And then I brought it to market and was like, hey guys, here we go. And the only people that bought it were like, hey, how do I scale my abs to 30K a day? That's all they cared about. No one cared about a single thing I made. And so I realized that I had just completely missed everything. I had missed the market entirely. I had made something that I wanted that no one else wanted. And after everything was said and done, I was about 100K cash into it, 80K plus all the other stuff that I had, all the people that I had to support it and everything. And when I finally decided to shut it down and realizing that I just lost $100,000 cash, and this was like the first time I'd had like that much money, I remember I felt like the biggest loser on the planet. I felt like the single biggest loser ever. And I'm hanging out with my dad one day and he's like, dude, what's wrong? You're not yourself. What's going on? And I go, Dad, you know what? Turns out I'm not an entrepreneur. Turns out I suck. And I was like super embarrassed to tell him what happened because I didn't want him to know how bad I had failed. Right. Like it was a complete swing and a miss. And then I realized I could have done the exact same thing and just used Kajabi and not lost. And so it was like, I felt so dumb and I felt like I was the biggest failure ever. And I'm telling my dad like how I failed. And I'm expecting him to be like, son, maybe this is time for you to go apply for someone, right? Go get a job. Like, go
Be
grow.
smart.
Yeah, be normal. And to my surprise, my dad goes, look, Jordan, you chose this life and sometimes you're going to spill some milk and there's no point in crying over it. You just got to clean up and understand that you're going to spill some more. My CPA said it even better. He goes, look, man, you're going to lose way more than this in the future. Like you think this is your last loss? Like you're going to lose way more than this. Looking back, when I look at it now, I understand the reason why I lost was because I wanted to make something beautiful. I didn't want to make something ordinary. That came from a good place. The lesson I learned from that was super important. And that's the same reason why most businesses fail, right? No product market fit. It's like, how do you put your life savings into something that has no product market fit? You're delusional. You believe that you are everyone. And the reality is you need to be a great listener. You need to listen to the market. You need to see what they want and build what they want. And I think the best innovators build what the market doesn't even know that they want yet. These are the Henry Fords, the Steve Jobs, and so that was like the first time where I realized like, yeah, my failure came from a good place, but unless I truly understood that the market demands what the market demands and it rewards those that fulfill that demand, that it was like very eye-opening and humbling. And I would say that was like the biggest like fail moment where I really like, I internalized it and it started to really change and form who I am today.
That's so huge. What's funny too is that you're like saying where you were and where I am at the same time, right? You created a platform. It's so good that you recognize that you're like, I built what I wanted, but sometimes we always go, but this is what I want. So everybody wants it. Not
Right.
everybody wants it. And I quickly realized that too. I wanted to build a platform that had optimization in there. I wanted to build a platform, omni-channel, all these things. So I kept preaching, I still preach, a platform is only as powerful as its usage. So when we started doing an analysis on the back end of who's using what features on the platform, we quickly realized, I think like 70 to 80% of the time, people are in that Facebook optimization feature. Like they're not even looking at anything else.
Right.
I'm sitting there going, why am I spending all my time on these reports? Why am I spending all my time on these things? All they care about is the Facebook optimization feature. And then you have to have a community aspect as well as saying, what do you want? I will roadmap it. And then it gives you the mental space to walk away and go, how can I create something like a Steve Jobs and like a Bill Gates that is so far beyond, oh, Bill Gates is an interesting one, but so far beyond.
I would say he falls into that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so far beyond what you would even want to know. Elon Musk is a great example of that, right? He's creating a whole new world in his head. A great one. Look, Jeff Bezos, controversy, but still, like he created something far beyond what we ever thought was going to be possible. He created a logistics company.
I think Bezos is a great example, right? Because you look at his letter to shareholders before Amazon really is profitable. And he basically writes probably 7 years, 5 years before they're profitable. And he goes, look, we could be profitable today. This is to the shareholders, the people that gave him all the money. And he's, hey, look, we could get the ROI that you have a knife to my throat over right now, but we're not going to. We need to acquire customers. He understood that the value was the massive amounts of customers that bought from Amazon 30 times a year. And he was willing to forsake even profit to the people that he, owed a return to in order to acquire that vision. And now you look at what he's doing, and I think the average fees, so like the average take rate from Amazon from their vendors is 30 to 40% before ads.
Yep.
Right. So he was so right that he found out a way to have such like a monopoly, for I don't know any other word for it, that people would pay 35, 40% gross revenue just to sell on this platform because so many customers were there. And that's an example, I think, of someone who really saw where it was going before it got there, cared about what the consumer wanted above even the shareholders, and went on to create one of the most valuable companies in history because of it.
Absolutely. There's two prongs to that, right? One is going to be he had a fiduciary responsibility to his shareholders. And some CEOs might think that fiduciary responsibility is the today profit. And some, like Jeff Bezos, look at that fiduciary responsibility for the long term, what we can multiply. And it's the shareholders sitting there and going, are we willing to put our time in for this person and this vision? Or are we not? And as you are for Motif and I am for AdBeacon, we have to think about those things. And I'll be the first one to admit sometimes I'm very short-sighted in it, but then you have to take 10 steps back, aerial view, and go, okay, what are we doing here? For example, when you said gamification, like that crossed my mind too with AdBeacon. I think that gamification could have worked for your platform, but I think it should have been a secondary thought and not a primary. And again, that's my opinion. And that's the way I think about it is who cares about gamification if no one's going to use the platform? I know it's to encourage gamification, but right now, that gamification to me in my mind is virality. How do we make it viral that more people can see less money on ads? But again, still too siloed. That's still too siloed in comparison to like a Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, et cetera.
Yeah, I think like the gamification in itself was not a bad idea. It was that I was gamifying something that didn't have good usage to begin with for my audience, right? My audience, the people that were coming into this program, they wanted to know how to scale, right? They didn't want to learn how to reprogram their minds so their dopamine baseline was set lower, right? That wasn't what they desired. And so I built this whole
you.
I know.
You.
No. And so I built this whole platform and like I had to do it custom because Kajabi didn't have these features I wanted. And then when I looked at everything, I think I think it was like 3% of people actually even went into those sections, right? So I sold 100 of these programs and 3 people opened it. No one actually went through the whole section. And I realized no one cared. And it was like the most disheartening. Oh my gosh, I've wasted all this time, money. The only thing they care about is hopping on a call where I walk through how we scale ads. That's the only value that's really being derived from this. It was a really tough lesson, but I'm glad I learned it. I'm glad I went through that. It was that failure that really taught me a hard lesson in the reality of the marketplace that I benefit from every day.
I love that. And again, like you have to seek, this is a very complicated conversation to have, but it's like I almost encourage people to seek out failure because, for example, I think I've used the teacher example once, so I'm going to use the relationship example since you decided to bring up exes in the past. So let's do that. We start to get callous to bullshit. Okay. So date my first guy, trash. Date my second guy, trash. Date my third guy, flaming trash. Date my fourth guy, less trash. But now at the place that I'm in, I can smell fiery fucking trash from 13 miles away. I know what's going to happen. I can see it from an aerial view. And I myself, through maturity, through experience, can make a decision and have discernment on whether or not I want to welcome that in my life or not. It's the same thing with business, at least to my understanding. I've had so many things flop in terms of activations, people not showing up. I used to be in charge of events. And my job was to get people there for a Modelo and Super collaboration where you've got these big companies and they're looking at you going and skull candy and they're like, okay, you're going to bring people. And you're like, okay. But the more and more you realize that failure is inevitable and you can seek out what are the telltale signs, and then you surround yourself with people who have failed multiple times, you start to not react the way that you used to. Like that jolt of wanting to cry and that shutdown is gone. And you just go, okay.
Totally. Oh man. That is so real. And there's a freedom that comes with that, right? That's what my dad was saying when he was like, hey, look, you got to spill some, son. It's going to happen. Now I'm not afraid to, I don't want to lose that money, right? But I'm not afraid to. I know that's part of the process. I also know that I'm going to get up from that. I'm going to be okay. And I think once you go through that, once you get punched in the face and you wake up the next morning and yeah, maybe you can't chew food right. Yeah, maybe your face is swollen, but you realize I'm okay. You're not as afraid to walk down the street and confront something that could hurt you, right? Because you know you're going to be okay. Now, there's another side to that, right? Where if you lose good fear, you can make stupid decisions. But I think it's good failure that takes you to that point of learning that you can take risks, you can take losses, and you can still stand up and be okay. And that's where you're able to go do things that require a ton of vision that other people don't see in the short term, that has that big payout like Bezos did with Amazon, right? It's once you're willing to fail, know that you're going to be okay. That you have the confidence to really stick to your guns when other people may not see it as it really is.
Yeah. Fail with fire and fail with confidence. Fail with confidence, knowing that I'm going to do it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's not a gamble. I don't gamble, which is the funniest thing. Like I do not gamble, but I like to make educated risks. That's different. You make educated risks versus gambling. If you have a gambling problem, don't go into paid media. Do not do it.
For sure.
You know,
For sure.
But if you're willing to take educated risks and you love a little high, come into the paid media pool. But I will say this, just to round that, you said it so beautifully. It just popped up as an example. I consult for the previous agency that I was at every once in a while. And one of the strategists came up to me and she's freaking out. I rebuilt the campaigns and it's not working. It's not working. And I'm like, okay, you'll figure it out. And she was like almost upset with me. She was like, are you like, that's all you're going to say is you'll figure it out? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, why are you so calm? I was like, because you were the third strategist that has had this exact conversation with me about this exact account in 3 years.
Right.
Like it happens. And guess what? They're still a client because they trust us and we're going to do our best. And I trust that you're going to figure it out. You're not going to want to lose. I'm not going to fix it for you.
Yeah.
Help will help you. And it was almost like a blissful moment between us because she trusts me now. I go, wait a minute, remember when this person did this and this person called me and said the same thing? And you start to go back down memory lane. So that callousness doesn't always have to be a negative thing. It can also be a very beautiful thing.
Yeah. And you need it because this is an up and down game, right? It's a roller coaster, right? 1 week you have an affiliate offer that's just printing money. And you have this client that's just scaling aggressively and everything is great. And then the next week, the offer gets, capped or pulled or it stops converting and the client fires you. And now you're back to, hey, how do I save a couple bucks so I can feed myself? Right. It just happens. It's part of the game. And I think what happens after you go through a few of those cycles is the downs stop feeling like doom. You stop thinking like, oh, this is the end, right? I have one offer in my mind is specifically coming to mind this year, right? I had 1 month where I had a net profit of what I took home of 63K with one offer. The next month I had 6K. So 90% drop month over month. And because our ads stopped converting. So people that say that creative fatigue is not real, go buy your own media, go be an affiliate. You'll learn very quickly. It's very real. And it happened so many times that my CPA was like, dude, what happened? Like your client roster is exactly the same, but month over month, you have a net loss of like, how did that happen? And I just told him, I'm like, hey man, the creative died. Like it's not converting anymore. It's $4 over the CAC target that we need or the CPA target. We're just not making money on it. So we had to cut it instead of lose money, but no worries. It's going to come back. And he goes, how can you say that? something dries up 90% month over month, and you're just sitting here saying it's going to come back. I'm like, this has happened 5 times already, right? It's died a million times. We just need a new ad to really pop. And as soon as we get that, sure enough, I spent 23K on that offer yesterday. So it's like, it's happened so many times that when you become callous on those down slopes, you don't panic, even though there's a lot of reason maybe to panic, but you know that it's going to come back. And I think that's why failure is so important. It conditions you and toughens you to survive things and to not freak out when things are not good. And you look at like car accidents that people get involved in. A lot of the accidents are caused by people like swerving or something and then overcorrecting, right? And had they not overcorrected, it wasn't even the obstacle that caused the accident. It was the overcorrection. And I think the failure in business will teach you how to not overcorrect and avoid those unforced errors that really turns a fender bender into a totaled vehicle. And instead, you just take your lumps and keep moving.
You let Jordan talk, and then it just gets better and better and better. Before I wrote something down. I always write things down because like they're good nuggets. It's the down, was it? Did I write that wrong?
Downturn?
The downturns stop feeling like doom.
Yeah.
So I love that. The downturns stop feeling like doom. And again, that common sense. What wasn't released in the founder course was me and Shaq were sitting down and we were looking through one of the campaigns for Shaq, and we were all kind of asking different questions. And one of them was, why did this guy being the paid media strategist, why did he start spending a shit ton of money in this when clearly metrics are not reflecting good signs? And we just sat there and we go, because he felt like
he felt it.
He felt
Yeah.
it. Okay. There's this unspeakable thing where you go, it's okay. And it's that callousness that you're speaking to. It's the down stops feeling like doom. And where you go, I just know. And maybe it pays out, and maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're a complete idiot, but now you have to work 10 times harder to back up, but you can. You know you can. And also the ad fatigue. So if anybody watches the founder course, please do use one of our links, Jordan's or mine. You get to choose who gets the credit. Definitely watch what we talk about when it comes to ad fatigue. And I don't want someone to misunderstand what Jordan said. Ad fatigue is real. You just have to understand what ad fatigue is. It doesn't mean constantly switch out ads because you're scared and that you have anxiety.
Does not mean that.
It means metrics reflect a switch out and a swap out. That doesn't mean always the offer is bad. Just might mean that the creative is bad. It's not bad, but it just stopped working.
And so you really feel this again. I feel like there's a lot of stuff on Twitter that's talked about by people who have the luxury or the privilege to live in a world where they can afford a $5 increase in CAC, right? If you're an affiliate, that's the difference between you making money and losing money, right? So when you watch your ad slowly get more expensive, and then suddenly you're out of profitability. And this has happened 5 times before. And every other time, once you got a new video that popped, the exact same offer went right back to the moon. You'll learn very quickly that yes, even though an ad can continue to drive sales, won't be profitable for someone who has those really tight margins. And that's where creative fatigue, in my mind, really comes into play. To your point, you don't need to swap things out all the time. And some creative will have a bad week, come back the next week, right? I'm talking zooming out and looking at it over like a few week perspective. But in my experience, especially in the affiliate side of the game, that creative will die. Every single creative has a lifespan. That lifespan is variable. It depends on a lot of different things. Some creative lasts way longer than others, but everything will die at some point. And it's just a question of how long you can make that last and how big you can take it.
Everything will die at some point, including you.
Yeah. It's so
on this podcast, you will die.
I love the way that Fight Club says on a long enough timeline, the survival rate of everyone drops to 0. It does, right? It really does. And yeah, I think it's just a great way to look at that sentiment.
So good. That being said, let's go straight into hot takes. I want to know what your hot takes are in the space, in the life. I am really scared about what Jordan's hot takes are, but hey, a little challenge never hurt nobody. So go for it, Jordan.
Okay, so I have 3 and you're going to hate at least 2 of 3. The first one is that UGC in its current context is trash.
Oh my God,
Uh,
not again.
I
Not
know,
again.
I know you had this debate with Nick Shackelford already. Shout out to Nick. I love that human being, but he was right and you were wrong. And I think your counter,
Excuse.
your counter it was anecdotal, right? You're like, hey, how can UGC be dead? Because my Breeze ad is like running all the time. And that's an example of where UGC worked. I'm not saying UGC can't work. I'm saying UGC at large is trash. This idea that you can go get some random creator to film with your brand, take that video, put it into Facebook and have a profitable ad, 90% of the time at least is wrong. I have a brand that I'm a shareholder in where we just scaled up to 50K a day on Facebook. When we took over, they were at 8K a day in spend. So we've scaled this spend massively. And during that process, we've tested at least 50 creators, 50. One of them worked, right? So 1 out of 50. Now, on the flip side, our in-house ads that we created with our creators, which look like UGC, but they're not, right? They're actor generated content. We call them narrative ads. Our conversion rate there, or our hit rate, if you will, is about 30%, right? So 1 out of 3 is going to land as opposed to 1 out of 50. And my hot take right now is UGC as its current rendition, as it currently sits in the market, is trash. Now you can have really good creators, people that really understand ads like you, who can make really good ads for Breeze. I know exactly what ad you're talking about. That one's fire, right? It's a fire ad. I've seen it a bunch of times. And that's a great example of someone who really understands ads, making an ad that looks like UGC. But 99% of UGC creators make content, not ads. Big difference.
Okay. I actually don't disagree with you. I think they're just nuances with how we're saying things, right? Technically, I do fall into the UGC category for Breeze because Breeze never paid me and Breeze never gifted me. I bought Breeze. So I still fit into the category. I sent them the content.
Technically, yeah.
Contract. We're friends, right? But I'm not going to,
Sure.
and this is a character thing for me. I'm not going to say something's great unless I really, truly feel like it's great. That's just who I am. With everyday don'ts, I do that with everybody's stuff. Okay. So nuance, right? UGC, I don't believe is trash. However, I do believe narrative ads are key. You need to find somebody that knows how to sell the ads, who also understands how to communicate authenticity. You need the thumb stopper mentality. You need to hit your value props, but maybe you don't. You have to be able to create variations and effectively, like I said, communicate. If you don't have somebody that has that brain, they're only going to create content. So I do agree with you there. UGC is tough for me because when people say no, UGC or UGC is trash, my instant thought goes, so you're going to go back to static? You're going to go back to very highly produced video? Or are you going to rework what did work in the past, but maybe get a little bit smarter about it? So maybe we don't call it UGC. Maybe we call it narrative. Maybe we call it actor generated content. So,
but that's not UGC, right? It's not just, it's not a nomenclature difference. It's a difference in the entity itself, right? UGC is a user that made the content. A narrative ad is a paid media specialist who is creating a video specifically to sell. Right? That stuff is amazing. To the end user, they probably don't know the difference. They probably think they're the same thing. Behind the curtain, we know it's vastly different, right? One we see work 1 out of 3. The other one works 1 out of 50. I'm saying the one that works 1 out of 50, the classic UGC style that you see all over your timeline right now, is trash, is dying. It's a bubble that's popping.
The bubble that's popping because it's saturated, highly saturated.
Correct.
Also, like everything looks the same. Perfect example is, and we're going to go a little over time. I apologize if you have a hard stop, but great. I don't want to talk to anybody else anyway. I had this conversation with a client and they're like, you were pushing video for so many years. You're like, I think 1 year actually. It was like, you need more video. We knew video was hitting and now it's not hitting. And they're going, why do you think video isn't hitting? And I said, I'm going to give a very generalized thought process. And this is my media buying style. If I, as a user, am going into TikTok, which rose tremendously after COVID.
Sure.
If I'm going into TikTok, what is it all? Video. If I go into Instagram, what is it all? Video, because it's the same style as TikTok because they're trying to compete. And then media buyers are doing video. All you're seeing is video. So now what is not saturated? Static. So now that's your thumb stopper. That's my assumption, right? We all have a hypothesis and then we have to have data to support. But that's just my thought process behind it. So it's the same thing with UGC. If I'm constantly seeing someone going, so I just found this, and you're like, kill
A
me.
lot of you are asking me about my skin routine. Like
Nobody.
nobody has asked you about
Nobody.
shit, and you know it.
Everyone's asking you to stop, actually.
Exactly, right? And it's funny you bring up the static versus video. My second hot take is that images are better than videos 90% of the time.
I don't.
Yeah, 90% of the time. And it's people like we have this example for Glade, right? Glade's an amazing brand. Shout out to Kurt Nichols. He's an amazing founder. And we made some like really cool video ads. And if I were to show them, I think objectively, everyone would be like, what a cool concept. That looks totally different than most video ads I see out there. And it has a really great direct response backbone without feeling like super salesy, right? Everything that you would want most of the time. What I find fascinating is a picture of the product that I took in my backyard just crushes it, right? Just crushes it. And so I think people they get shiny object syndrome thinking that, I have to make this like really powerful video to scale, when the reality is there's a good chance a simple static image is going to perform better than a video, like a lot of the time, right? I would say like 9 out of 10 times we see images perform better than videos. That 1 out of 10 though, that's the home run that we can spend 10K a day on one video. And I will say that those video ads scale the best. But yeah, my second take would be that images are better than video like 90% of the time.
I don't disagree. I think right now, also like just to double down on what you said, is often we're trying to be the Monets and the Picassos in the ad world. And we don't realize that, especially with men, are very interesting. It's like the psychology of buying behavior. I've done ads for women's clothing and men's clothing. The ad structures are so different.
Sure.
With men's, for example, I'm sure you would love Brixton, is you're wearing a Carhartt hat, right? Carhartt. Most people know Carhartt. So what if I told you that I just did a hyper zoomed in photo of the corduroy texture against the Carhartt label? That hits almost every time, versus a vibey photo of a guy in a Carhartt hat on a construction site, or let's just say on a skateboard, and people don't get it. And that's why I could literally preach about this till I'm blue in the face of brand versus performance teams just clashing.
Totally. Yeah.
We're at a point where we're like, creative is king. That's all we've been preaching to everybody. And then they go, then I need to create the most beautiful ad in the world. No, you need to realize who your market is, do a case study just to see what hits and what doesn't, and then talk to your demo.
Yes.
If you have access, get that feedback. What is your third and final? I'm worried.
My third is that most people shouldn't be entrepreneurs. There's like a big push right now for everyone to quit their 9-to-5 and go start your own business and go make 40K before noon and wake up at 4 a.m. and cold plunge and have to soak in the sunlight before the sun's up. And look, all those things are great. I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying most people should not be entrepreneurs. Most people, it's a shame that we knock the traditional path. It's a shame that we knock the 9-to-5, when for most people, that's the best way to do it. If you haven't been on the floor crying, thinking you don't know how you're going to make it work, and you don't know how you're going to pay your bills, and you don't know if you're going to be able to afford food, then you've never really been an entrepreneur, right? Every entrepreneur has been in that moment where they are crumpled on the floor. Unless you want that, unless you're like, that sounds great, let's make that part of my journey, don't go into entrepreneurship. There's a lot of really smart people who are being influenced by ridiculous dudes online who are trying to sell them a community, a course, when in actuality, like, they should go work a great job and have a stable pension. And I think people knocking the 9-to-5 are oftentimes have bad intentions. And I think that a 9-to-5 can be great. And that's not something you hear from a lot of entrepreneurs in the digital marketing world these days.
I'm jealous of the 9-to-5ers because it's dude, you get weekends? Fuck.
When you finish work, you're done. You go
That
home and that's it. That's insane, right? That's just insane to me.
I have like my laptop in bed and I'm just like doing stuff. And thank God I have a partner who gets it. But if you don't have a
Same.
partner, and anyway, back to the point of what you were saying is so beautiful. Not everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. And also, I truly believe that just because you say something out loud doesn't mean you are that thing.
Oh, totally.
Just because you say you're really strong, what tested you to find out you were really strong? And tee it up, right? Because it's fight or flight, and you don't know what you are until you're in it.
And I
And
would say oftentimes it's if someone's telling you they are that thing, that's a good indicator they're not that thing, right? You never hear Elon Musk talk about how he's so rich, right? Why? Because he's rich. He doesn't need to say anything.
I'm a really nice person.
Exactly. I'm a really good person. It's who are you trying to convince? Who said you
Myself.
were, right? And it's that projection. So I think lots of times Seneca says that we suffer more in imagination than reality. And that's so true. And the other side of that coin is we imagine ourselves different than we actually are. We think that we're different than we really are. If you want to know someone, look at their actions. And I think most people, they function best when they're a part of something and they're working in an organization as opposed to being responsible for that entire organization.
Oh, so good. Watch their actions. I think I've said this in every single episode except for yours. And now I'm going to say it. I have had the beautiful privilege of being able to come into a space new, fresh, and watch everybody that has a human space, including yourself, and just watch their actions until they find out who I am, whatever that means. I just watch and watch. And I'm like, is it the same person I met a month ago? Is 6 months later, are they the same person? You know, because you can say a million times that you love people. You could say a million times that you care about people and that you don't care about the money and that you don't care about the clout. But now all I see is you posting about the Lamborghinis that I fully know you probably didn't purchase. And even if you did, why do you need to post it? It's like, where is your North Star? And I always say this with my friends, is what was the condition of your heart? Like
Sure.
when you're doing something. And I am the queen of saying something and people will misunderstand what I mean. And 90% of the time I come in with a pure heart. And that's my point, is that you don't know a person until you watch their actions and where they plant their seeds and what actually blossoms. But also circling back to what you said is, in the end, you don't know if you're fight or flight. So you should probably put yourself in positions to see if you're fight or flight. And if you are fight, then maybe do entrepreneur. And then you also have to have a self-reflection moment of going, do I even want to fight?
Yeah, I would say if you can do anything besides this, go do that thing, right? Only do this if you're just going to be miserable unless you do it, right? I saw this in my own life so many times, the same cycle for every job. And the name of this podcast is Fail with Fire. Like, I have failed so many times. Before I got into this, like every job, I would go into a sales job and it would be the same thing. I would start, I would get good, I would be the number one salesman, I'd stop showing up to work, I would get fired. Like it was the same thing because I would get over it, I would get bored, I would get disinterested in what I was doing, and I never saw the end game. Now, with what I'm doing, you don't have to tell me to go to work. I genuinely want to do this, but I had to learn a very hard lesson of I tried everything else. It just didn't work for me. This was the only thing that I really would pour my heart into. And if you can do anything that's not this, go do that thing and you'll know it's for you. It's just, you can't wait to get crumpled up on the floor because you made a bad decision 3 months ago.
Yeah, but you also knew it was your decision. I always told myself I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always told myself that. And then I created a t-shirt company when I was really young. I think it was like 18. It was Phoenix, and it did not do well. It did not do well at all. And I started a food company with a food prep meal company with my ex. It did not do well. It folded.
Sure.
But what I also realized is when I was in the 9-to-5s, I would outwork everybody. And I would love it. And I'd get obsessive. And then I would outwork and I would climb very much to the top. And then I'd get bored. And then I'd get bitter and resentful.
Yeah.
Can't get bitter and resentful when the only person you have to look to blame is yourself.
Totally. And if you are bitter and resentful looking at yourself, like that's a moment where there's like real personal growth. It's like, why am I so angry at myself? And that's my journey mirrors that a lot as well.
Cool. That's awesome. See, let's see, we're friends for a reason. But yeah, you know what? We'll end it on a really positive note. And this is the last question I pretty much ask everybody is, I'm assuming that the people who are listening to this podcast are the people who already know about you, want to know a little bit more about you, or are people who are just coming out of university, because I push this pretty hard for students to listen to. What would be your word of advice to students that are coming out of college that are hungry and want to make the right decisions to get a lifestyle that we were just presenting?
Yeah, I've already touched on it, but I'll reiterate. Start with the lifestyle you want and work backwards from there. I think if you can start by thinking like, because for me, it was I saw digital marketing as the antidote to that sitting in the freeway and going into the aquarium. And that thing that horrified me, that I remember thinking like, I'd rather just wander the US randomly than have to go do that. Digital marketing was the antidote to that. As I went through it, I fell in love with the work and wanted to just be the absolute best. And that's ultimately what got me here today. But the number one piece of advice that I can recommend is find the lifestyle you want and work backwards from there. Because if you love your job, you're going to have such a massive advantage because you're going to put in the extra hours. You're going to go the extra mile. You're going to work harder than someone because you love your work. And if you can set your life up to where you're passionate about the work that you do, you're going to have a way easier time beating your competition because they don't like work, right? They have to force themselves to do it, but you're going to be naturally inclined to. And so my biggest recommendation is don't start with the end result, start with the lifestyle that you want, work your way backwards. And that's how you can find yourself in a career that you're really passionate about. And it's that passion that's going to give you the edge to reach the upper echelons of your career.
These episodes just better and better. And I'm so grateful that you joined us for season 2. Also, my dog is going crazy. So I apologize to everybody. If you don't know Franklin, he's my one-eyed dog who thinks he's a big dog. That being said, we are so blessed to have you. I'm blessed to have you in my life, both you and Taylor. And
we feel the same way.
Thank you. Where can everybody find you? Social media wise, Motif Digital, is it just motifdigital.com?
Yeah, motif.digital. We're building a new website, so nothing's even up right now. We're very boutique. I think the best way to find me is Twitter, Jordan Menard, Jordan Menard on Twitter. That's just where the best way to contact me. And yeah, if you have any questions about media buying, you want to crack into this field, get at me on there. I love talking to people about this topic specifically, and that's the best way to reach me.
Absolutely. And then if you haven't already seen it or you haven't purchased the founder course, you get to know Jordan's story there too structurally. But if you want to go more in depth, just reach out to him independently as well. So you've got so many ways to connect with these incredible people. So thank you, Jordan. It's been an absolute pleasure and we'll chat soon.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to be here.